So let our motivation be one of nurturing and radiating without a radiator, meaning without the sense of I am radiating, just radiation without a center, radiating calm, clear, and kind. And may that help heal, begin to heal our broken families, our broken societies, our broken world. Okay, so let's sit quietly together. We can watch the breath, we can engage in a spacious awareness. Those who know the practices, you can have the attention without a particular object. If you want to use the breath, please use the breath, but let it be a light touch, not hard or harsh. There has to be a stillness, a relaxation, and an attentiveness, those three. None should be missing. But especially the attentiveness and the relaxation, the ease. Okay, so we'll sit together quietly for 10 minutes. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, the new people who've come. Bob, Dr. Sonali, Gaurav, and thank you for the people who started, still being here. Venerable Kundrol, who is staying up very late at night in Montana, USA. Jan, who's beginning to look a little tired, late. Oh, it must be very late. Not so late in Australia, perhaps. Late evening, maybe dinner time. Thank you. And Ananya, thank you. Sonaliji, thanks. Samira, old students here. Ranjana. Ranjana, I'm not sure that I know. I probably do. I just keep on forgetting names, which is atrocious. Okay, so let's look at our theme for today, which was inspired by my dashing over last night to Jaipur to catch some of the last 2 days of the Literature Festival, which involved a session this morning with 3 excellent people on the Russian Revolution and the Civil War, meaning 1917 to 1921. And they also discussed the repercussions of that in the modern world, Ukraine and so forth. And they'll be talking more about that later. But what we want to look at is something which was triggered by this and by my study of history when I was younger, which is why in the name of revolution, everything seems to come apart at some point. It fails in the sense that there is betrayal, there's bloodshed. As they say, the children of the revolution get devoured by the revolution itself. Whether you look at the French Revolution, 1789 onwards, whether you look at, the Civil War in the States, you can look at some of the repercussions of that now. Whether you look at the Russian Revolution, whether you look at the English Revolution of the early 17th century, and so many so-called revolutions, the so-called Arab Revolution, right, of the around 2010, 11, the Arab Spring. So how much peace and well-being has that brought? Why do revolutions fail to bring the peace that they're supposed to engender, right? What kind of revolution do we really need? As the historians today very well mentioned, and which is, we forget it at our peril, these historians mentioned how history is complicated, history is messy. As we Buddhists say, don't we? Everything is dependent arising. For any event, there are hundreds of thousands of micro events and causes and conditions, right? I mean, just look at your human body. How many causes and conditions just for one human body, and for that human body to stay alive? How many causes and conditions do we think there are? I mean, I have no idea because I haven't studied anatomy and I'm not a doctor, but literally hundreds of thousands of things going on which keep us alive. So if that's the case, just to keep a human being alive, imagine what it takes to bring about a so-called historical event. And all of those factors changing moment by moment, moment by moment. Nothing is staying exactly the same, is it? So no wonder, things are complex. And then one thing I've noticed in my study of history and just study of myself and human beings, and I'm sure you have the same understanding, this is not something unique to me, our motivations are very complex, aren't they? I've lost you all. I've done something to the screen. I hope you can still hear me. I hope to get back to you in a minute. I don't know what's happened. Okay, there you are. So what struck me is that here, in the context of the Russian Revolution that they were looking at this morning, the main figures, of course, we have the Tsarist regime, which they were overthrowing, aren't they? The Tsar. You can read about all these things on Google to get a potted history very quickly. Or if you look at the literature of that period, then you can see. Very happy, Maya, you could join us. I hope you are feeling better. Your friend Milind is here, whom I've just been introduced to properly. Thank you. So if you look at Lenin, if you look at Stalin, if you look at Trotsky, but especially, yeah, I mean, all of them, what are they motivated by? What are they motivated by? You know, it's not just ushering in some kind of golden age where everybody will be treated equally, where old wounds will be forgotten. There's a tremendous amount of anger, right? Anger at the class system, anger at the Tsarist regime, anger at, you know, whatever. These were human beings who became very famous, obviously, but who had the frailties of human beings. If you read their personal histories also, it shows how vulnerable and perhaps not very nice in a sense they were, despite the fact they could give amazing speeches and change the course of world history. That's another matter. But if you, read about if Lenin, was he kind to his wife? No, apparently not. He's very difficult to get on with. And so on and so forth. We can see that these are very frail human beings, motivated by not just kindness or the wish for there to be a better world for everyone. Most of these people at that time believed in class revolution, which meant you had to, get back at the ruling class, at the aristocracy, at the exploiters. And that was the case in France during the, I'm making it all very simple. In any case, I was never much good at the French Revolution. British Revolution, I read, yeah. And if any of you are interested, you should read about it. It is fascinating what was going on in the early 17th century in England. There's a book by Christopher Hill, very famous Oxford historian, called The World Turned Upside Down, okay? Some of you might just enjoy that anyway. It's like an adventure story almost. Christopher Hill, The World Turned Upside Down, which is exploring revolutionary movements that came up in the early 17th century in England at the time of turmoil and when the monarchy was being questioned, right? And then they had their civil war and so forth. And maybe one good thing that did come out of it was that the parliament was strengthened and there was a parliamentary democracy emerged in England, although of course very much dominated by the big farmers and so forth. And if you look at the British government over the last few years, it's a joke in a sense. They don't represent the people that well, do they? If you've been looking carefully, it is really quite awful. Real combination of foolishness and prejudice, I would say. Anyway, so when you look, I'm saying, at people's minds, people's intentions, none of these people who started these great movements were, they weren't dharma rajas. They weren't rajas who, as our great speaker, Professor Garfield, last night at IIC said, they weren't people like Nagarjuna. They didn't have access to people like Nagarjuna giving them advice, as Nagarjuna did in his Ratnavali and Surlekha and so forth. He gave wonderful advice to people with power, the kings, who were willing to listen to him and were willing to put some of it into effect. Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky, all these people, they didn't have awakened people to advise them, to show them the right path. So none of these revolutions worked, and they could never work, in my opinion. If there are other historians here or people who've studied that period, then in a while I'd like to hear your opinions on that. But of course, from a Buddhist perspective, we would we not emphasize intention, motivation? What's the motivation to set a revolution in progress? And for me as a teenager, the Bolsheviks, Lenin and so forth, they were my heroes. They were my heroes, getting rid of the rotten state of the Tsars, right? But then when I read later, and about 8-10 years ago, Simon Seban Montefiore's book, and he's one of the speakers here today. When I read his book, Stalin and the Court of the Red Tsar, I realized what a bunch of criminals a lot of them were. Totally, what shall I say? Yeah, psychopaths, some of them, it seems. Totally disturbed human beings who wrought, due to their power, untold suffering on their fellow human beings in Russia. I'm not talking about other countries for now. Stalin's purges and so forth. He massacred tens of thousands of his own people, through his paranoia and through his network of terror. Nothing else to call it, state terror. If you want to know more about it, also read Solzhenitsyn's books, which were very popular in the 60s and 70s. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, The First Circle, Cancer Ward, these books, they're amazing. And they show the what shall I say, the woundedness and the violence of that time. So when you look at that, and we'll come back to people in a minute, we'll have some discussion, and then we'll look at how we might be able to look at it from a more inner perspective, using Buddhist and maybe, Krishnamurti, various people have looked at revolution, haven't they? The inner revolution. Everyone has, right? From a spiritual point of view. But what we want to say here is that we cannot see how any of these world revolutions could have worked to bring about a more united, happier humanity, because they were based on people's differences and the anger against a system that certain group of people felt had exploited them, and which they wanted to get rid of in a very violent way. What I was talking about is when I read this book by Montefiore, Stalin and the and his Red Court, it's just tens of thousands were eliminated with a pistol shot to the head. Bombs weren't dropped on them; they were executed in the back of the head with a pistol shot. Okay, so what is that? What's going on there? Very interesting to look at from a psychological point of view. And it happened in Mongolia when the Soviets took over Mongolia in 1921. Didn't leave it till 1991. So I think, Jan, you've been to Mongolia. Yeah, and we've seen the painfully slow process of bringing it back to some kind of normalcy. Even after 30 years, it's been 30 years plus since the Soviets left. But they destroyed that country. They destroyed Buddhism, executed hundreds and hundreds of monks, destroyed monasteries in the name of the communist revolution, and so forth. And this in a country that was primarily Buddhist by the time that Stalin and his henchmen took over, right? So that's also very interesting to look at, and very painful to look at, actually. Going to modern day Mongolia is very sad in many ways. Beautiful countryside, beautiful people, and the main capital is a mess. There's a lot of, alcoholism, very alienating kind of architecture, so on and so forth. Anyway, the legacy of the Soviets will last a long time there, just as the legacy of Nazism and many other things will last a long time in the world. And what we're seeing in Ukraine is, I think, something my teacher Lama Zopa Rinpoche said: when you study history, when you teach history to people at school, teach them also about karma, collective karma, how things ripen, how history shows us that you can't engage in large-scale violence and so forth without it coming back at you. It may take 1,000 lifetimes, or it may also come back quite quickly in the case of, collective karma, whatever. Or the trigger, at least, would come quickly. So who knows what seeds have been sown that are now ripening in the Ukraine. But the trigger certainly is events of the last few years, right? And the invasion. And the BBC correspondent Luke Harding is here talking this morning, and he's been there. He's seen the devastation, the suffering, as he put it, of men, women, and children. And of course, we see it on our screens, but we just another channel, isn't it, which we can quickly change. So anyway, that's what I just wanted to say. I haven't talked about inner revolution, that we can all discuss together, because that seems to be one of the main things we have to look at, how to have a good intention. When Shantideva says in his concluding chapter, may people think of benefiting one another. That's such a simple statement, and yet it seems to me such a central statement. Yeah, may people think of benefiting one another. None of the revolutionary movements were casting that net wide enough. They wanted to benefit a few people, of course. They didn't want to benefit everyone. Anyway, that's my whatever thesis, my blah blah. Now open it up, and we can discuss whatever we want to, but we need to go inwards also. But anyone who studied the period wants to talk about the history of it a little bit, or from what you may have read through literature or whatever, you're welcome to do so. There is so much here to be discussed, too much actually, but we can make a start, and maybe we can continue when well, tomorrow evening will also be from Jaipur, but then Tuesday session will be from Gompa in Delhi, I hope. I hope I get back to Delhi alive. So, yeah, it's open now. You can say something if you wish. So, maybe good to, yeah, put your hand up or whatever. Just say something loud enough so that it covers. I'm sorry. Hope it's not disturbing. Please carry on. It's not disturbing us.
Kabirji,
yeah.
can I?
I'm just going to change my position. Haji.
Yeah, I mean, Marx, I think, in the context of the Paris Commune, says that a revolution succeeds by failing. When the whole experiment failed, and
I see. What does that mean?
because the whole experiment it failed, and what he's talking about the earlier relationships of exploitations as a baggage, and that those broke down. And he speaks about this when the revolution had been overcome, in the sense that the earlier forces had still acquired, the participants of the Paris Commune had been slaughtered by the reaction, and yet he feels that that was a sort of a success. And inevitability, that's the inevitability of any revolution, that it fails. And Lenin also, I think, danced in the snow when the Soviet revolution survived one day more than the Paris Commune did.
Right.
So in a certain sense,
so
why are they doing this?
Why are they doing this?
Why
do they need revolutions if they know it's going to fail? And, it's obviously creating chaos for the future. Do they not see that? I don't think they see that, do they? They don't care. They just had an idea which they wanted to try out because of their ideology. And the result is civil war, destruction, the sowing of hatreds for the future, the hunting down of people like Trotsky and executing them abroad, etc., etc. So what's the point? Seems like from a Buddhist perspective, they are externalizing their internal dramas, not being able to cope with what is essentially a mental problem, and inflicting their garbage, if I might use the word of my earlier teachers, on others. Of course, there are real injustices in the world, but the way they're dealing with them is through their anger and not through their wish to heal the situation. You see what I'm saying? Sure, there's a problem, but then how do you deal with the problem? They're dealing with it via an ideology which a priori splits people up into basically the goodies and the baddies, right? And the classes, the lower class, the upper class, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. When you start dividing, it seems to me that's the end of it, divide and rule, divide and suffer. What would you say to that?
Sure. I mean, I see your point. what I was getting at is two things. One is, would it be right to slot say Lenin and Trotsky in the same group as, I mean, intentions vary with different people. And maybe there was a larger element of a peaceful vision in both Lenin and maybe Trotsky, certainly, than was with Stalin. And would it not also be a sort of a, I mean, I'm not an expert, you probably will have a better answer. Is there such a thing as a karmic inevitability of a violent revolution, regardless of what individual agents think or feel about it?
I would say there's a very strong sense of that, given that we behave badly according to Lord Buddha, and therefore at a certain point it culminates in results. And certainly I wouldn't bracket Trotsky and Lenin exactly the same way as Stalin. He had his own paranoia, his own viciousness, his own insecurity, and so forth. But what I'm trying to get at here, because, physics, Tushita Center Zoom session, is that what are the inner workings of the mind, which obviously have not been taken care of? I mean, okay, so Lenin, all of them, they could have been much more skillful, isn't it? Skillful means they needn't be saints, okay? They needn't be saints. That's very hard to be a Dharma king on the level of the early Tibetan kings who are supposed to be emanations of great bodhisattvas. We're not expecting that. But just a little bit more consideration for others that they didn't have because they were so angry. I think they were so caught up. I think Marx was much less angry in a sense. He was just clinically looking at the situation. But I don't think he had the anger of some of these later aggression with which they went at it, because, also it made them feel alive. Okay, anger makes us feel alive. Aggression makes us feel alive. If we feel insecure and small, then what better to be, standing on a truck in front of the Finland station in Petrograd, proclaiming revolution. So, they also wanted to promote themselves. Which is not bodhisattva-like. I mean, bodhisattvas promote themselves, but without thinking I am promoting myself, without the ego. So they're lacking a lot of things. And I think so long as we have these external revolutions led by people who haven't even started taming their minds, it's just going to be chaos, isn't it? Let's bring some more people into the conversation. Anyone else want to talk about this from what they have read in history or literature? And Milanji, we'll have to talk about this later when we meet in Pune or Delhi with Maya. Maya will give us tea and we'll all talk. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Maya ji, when you get well, which you will, you have to offer us tea and cake. Yeah. Let them eat cake after all. Yes.
I'll be very happy to.
Yes, you must work towards that. That should be your motivation for the next few weeks. Anyway, I hope you get your tests done and don't try to wiggle out of your tests.
No, yes. I just gave some blood to the bloodsuckers. There's more.
Oh, good. You're giving so much of your blood, you should, they should give you some kind of certification. Or give some of it to the mosquitoes. I'm sure some of the mosquitoes would love it. Put it in machines and throw it away. Anyway, sorry. So anybody else want to look at this revolution in the whole spectrum? What is revolution? Stroke transformation, you might want to add. What's it about? How to engage in it? What does Krishnamurti say? We've lost our person from Rishi Valley School. She's probably gone for lunch. Our teacher, Anushri. There's very good lunch at Rishi Valley School, not to be missed. So what do other people think? Jan? Ranjana? Okay, we teach our students about the French and Russian Revolution, but the content doesn't talk about the impact of violence, just facts. Yeah, of course, good historians do talk about the impact, but yeah, the impact is usually dreadful, isn't it? But you're right, they don't talk about long-term impacts. People who are young people today, I'm sure, who are looking at the Ukraine news, many of them, I wager, cannot even tell us the dates properly of the Second or the First World Wars, let alone some of the major events. You ask young students today, when was the Russian Revolution? When did Stalin, you know, what's the Ukraine-Russia equation? When did, you know, they won't be able to tell us. We are very ignorant of our history, of world history, and of course, Indian history. So yeah, you're right, Ranjanati, I think. We are interested in giving facts because it seems that's what can earn you the points to make you an IAS officer in the general studies test. You just need to know a bunch of facts, memorize them, and regurgitate them like a parrot, I think, for some of the exams anyway. I don't know how much intelligence is tested in IAS exams. Maybe someone can tell me. Sorry, Ajirji, I don't want to put down IAS, but you must have had to take IAS exams. Was your intelligence investigated or just your retentive power to remember facts?
I think it's really the retentive power.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty sad, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
a whole bunch of duffers in government, in the bureaucracy, who just have good memories, but don't have much humanity.
Yeah, that's right.
Skillful means, right? So that seems like a recipe for disaster when you have already ignorant and self-serving politicians above them. Very difficult for an honest, just bureaucrat, I would imagine.
In fact, one time we used to have even 10 marks compulsory on Gandhi studies.
Did you want to say something, Ajirji?
No, what I was saying that one time it was compulsory to study Gandhi, and in our general studies, 10 marks was allotted for that. Now it has also disappeared.
That was 10 out of 100?
Yeah, 10 out of 100.
Right,
and that's quite a lot, because even 1 mark used to make a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gandhiji is, we still keep him on our notes, our currency, and I'm wondering how long that will last. It seems like just a token lip service, doesn't it? Okay, chalo, we've got to keep him on the currency at least, or even though we hate him or, you know, despise him for being weak and blah, blah, blah. But let's keep him on the currency, because otherwise people will see through our agenda completely. Yeah, but I'm sure he won't be on our currency for much longer. I mean, how can he be? We need someone much more, I don't know, Sardar Patel-like, or even Savarkar or something. Or one of our business people. Of course, Gandhi was also an economist. There's a book come out on that. He had rich sponsors. He didn't mind having rich sponsors. That's okay, I feel, because his motivation was pretty good. But yeah, thanks for that feedback on the IAS exams. Okay, revolution, what is it? What is revolution? How do we go about it?
Are you asking me?
Asking everyone, but I can ask you first, yes?
Okay. I think one is really to the historians also. You have been the student of history, that also from one of the best universities in the world. My question is that, do we really learn from history?
No, we don't.
Somebody has recorded that till now there has been 5,000 wars in the world. Which means that we have learned. We have not learned anything.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So this is the answer you need to really give, because you are so passionate in the study of the history. Right. That is one. And secondly, talking about the revolution, external revolution to me It's like changing the furniture.
Sorry, I'm just showing you this. All right. Santayana said those who forget the past are destined to relive it, or something like that. A wonderful quote from the philosopher George Santayana. I think you had quoted it also once. You know, those who forget the past will be, you know, fated to kind of reap the consequences. And we're very forgetful, very forgetful of our culture, of our history. We're not loyal to friends sometimes. You know, we forget people who have helped us. I see that a lot in other people who have become rich and famous. They forget their friends who've helped them along the way, you know. Their friends have to, you know, they ignore their former friends. All of that. We're very forgetful people. And very imitative, aren't we? And artificial. Very, very imitative and artificial. Yeah. It's bad news, actually, Ajirji, very bad news. So that's why I'm desperate to find out what is the real revolution. That I'm not talking about historical revolution now. How do we change our world? How do we change our world?
Exactly. I think the first is whenever we study the history, we always talk of the external revolution. So I think the historical revolution to me is more like the expression of the ego. Okay. And
so what do we do about
like, it's more like adjusting the furniture in the drawing room from here to there.
Right.
The structure remains the same. I think the real revolution
that, but
is
knowing that restructuring it is going to annoy a certain member of your family, but you still don't care. You still do it.
It annoys. When I don't keep my cup on the table, my wife gets angry. What the hell is that? When I throw my shirt here and there, what is this? So I think that is very correct. In catering to some of the people by revolution, I think we are creating a lot of people who get annoyed. So which means it's leading more discontent, more anger, and more cause for the further revolution.
Okay, so now I ask you the question, Ajirji, what is the real revolution?
Yeah, that is what I'm really coming to now.
Please.
The real revolution, where is it? If I say that the external revolution is nothing but the manifestation of inner state of my mind, then the root is inside my mind. When the mind is changed, external change also take place. So I am basically looking that when there is a real mental change or the transformation in the mind, then only the external revolution would be meaningful for the cause of others.
Okay, now you have been someone who's been following Krishnamurti. What would you tell us about his core teaching on that? On what is the real revolution? In a nutshell.
Real revolution is the deep mental transformation.
That everyone says, but what is his method?
What is his method? I really, his method in a very simple way, I think would be what is his expression, which he talks about the awareness. I just forgot that word. He uses that. He talks about being aware. Can the mind be always aware of what is really happening in the mind?
Choicelessly aware.
Choicelessly aware. You know, when we exercise choice in the mind, we really create a barrier in the mind. But when we are choicelessly aware, we are having an insight to see what is happening in the mind. It is wholesome or it is unwholesome. There's a kind of an implicit wisdom choice in that choiceless awareness.
Okay, good. Okay, let's just leave you for a while and bring in some other people.
Yeah. Please leave me.
So now, Aliji, you're saying, I don't think it's one or the other. We need both. What do we need both? Both what? Constantly examining motivation is important. Yeah. What is it we need both of what?
Inner and action, inner, like, working on yourself and also acting in the world.
What did the speaker say last night? I'm wondering, because I have a very bad memory, but he said something really good about this. Professor Garfield, yeah, you were there, I think, unless it was a clone or.
I can't say it how exactly he said it. He said it quite nicely.
Yeah, he was very good.
I think he said something like, even when we are working on our inner selves, that is also an action. So
Talk
even
about
taking refuge is an action. Doing anything that constitutes the inner work is also action. So there isn't this dichotomy of inner and outer.
Yeah, that's very much Krishnamurti's point, isn't it? You are the world. We like to think the world is out there and I'm here, but from even a biological point of view, that's wrong. It's been proven now that we are not separate from the world on a physical level, on an energy level, and certainly on a mental level. We are not separate from the world. And astrology shows us how we are not separate from the solar system, actually. So yeah, in that sense, work on ourselves. And I like the way he spoke about path. The things are static, there's a path happening, there's a spiritual path happening, not something that just suddenly, happens. There's a path. So there's a process going on, a process of awakening, a process of getting better or whatever, Yeah. This is open for anyone.
And I think if we take it in a collective way, it is okay if some people in society focus more on, go spend 14 years in a cave and focus on the inner work more.
Absolutely.
And then there'll be more people who'll be acting more in the world, like IAS officers. So we'll need more of, collectively into everything. Yeah.
Because as you know, I think I mentioned this in something before. His Holiness was asked, what's the best way to help others? And the questioner was convinced His Holiness would say, go out there and help other people in society. But he said, the best thing, if you can, is to go into a solitary retreat and really do that well. And of course, that shows a long-term vision. Because if you can do that and really attain, say, bodhicitta and that kind of mind, say, together with a lot of wisdom, then you become someone who is of incalculable benefit to others, long-term, maybe not even in this life, but the perspective is a long-term one. But this life, of course, we have to be doing both.
But that requires a lot of patience. Like I spent
of course it does. But that's what he's saying is the best, if you can. He didn't say you do it, he said if you can. That would be the best. But of course it requires a lot of patience. Requires a lot of karma, good karma, I think, to do it, they say. Some people go into retreat, obstacles all the time. This doesn't work out, that doesn't work out. They get terribly sick. Other people go into retreat, everything works out. They've created all the causes. They've purified the obstacles one way or another. So yeah, of course it's not easy. I'm supposed to do a 1-month retreat this year, according to Rinpoche, which I will. I hope, but I'm kind of dreading the fact that I haven't created all the causes yet. So I have to do a lot of purification to know that I won't have too many obstacles. Of course, obstacles are also good. Yeah, we've been taught that. But, I don't want to break a leg before the retreat. I don't want to, get COVID and die before the retreat. I'd like to do a retreat, right? Because the Guru has said, do it. So, yeah, so one needs to have the right causes and conditions. Yeah, and it seems like most people just don't have that. Mostly people are bored. Sorry, not bored. They're not interested to do that. They're not interested. How do we create those causes? Typically, traditionally, in the famous question, the great Tsongkhapa asked Manjushri, who was his guardian deity. Manjushri said, you have to purify your negative karma through practices. You have to generate positive energy, and there are many practices for generating punya and positive energy in Buddhism. And you have to have devotion to your teacher, proper, devotion to a spiritual teacher. These are considered extremely important. And the whole teacher thing we need to look at in another session. But I think the emphasis on that is because through proper devotion to a guru, we get rid of ego and contact the deeper inner guru, which is the main point, the nature of our mind. That's what happens when we contact the inner guru. But the outer guru helps us get to the inner guru. Would you see it that way, Ajirji or Maya or Jan? Would you see that as correct, what I'm saying, or meaningful?
Yes.
Or have I misunderstood that?
No, very helpful.
As Dzongsa Rinpoche says, very interestingly, we are just confused. We have never, our mind has never, ever been separate from the mind of the Guru. It's just our divided mind thinks we're separate. When we develop proper devotion and so forth, we realize the Guru's mind and one's own mind at some level is the same. And that is united with the Buddha nature, the mind of the Buddha. So this is the unbelievably good news in Buddhism, that the inner revolution, all the material is there. We don't know, we don't need to go very far. The material for the revolution is in the mind. It's the Buddha nature. I say this as my elder sister had extreme physical pain years. For my parents, anything other than focus on her was physical. I see. Yeah, of course, certain circumstances in life make it difficult to pursue what you want to. But then, say you have someone who needs your help, who really needs your help, and you help them to the best of your ability. And that's amazing. You create positivity and goodness by helping someone who needs your help. With love and compassion, you help someone, you give up your own agenda for a while to help somebody. Actually, we say that is the cause for great happiness. Happiness starts when you begin to cherish others. So that's when you create amazing causes to be able to advance at a very deep level, not only in the future, but also now. There may be many brilliant people around, who know about emptiness and so forth. But maybe they're not very kind people or aren't kind to dogs and their neighbors and to their wives and husbands. So what's the point? So if someone is really looking after another person well, I don't know, I feel we should rejoice. Right? And that's why if our parents need help in their old age or whatever, if we help them, I think that's great. Especially if they haven't been very nice to us. But we still help them. I think that's the way to purify. That's the way to help. That's the way to create the causes for deep spiritual, I don't want to use the word progress or achievement. It sounds very materialistic. But I think, that really helps. That really helps. Thanks, Ranjana. Thanks. Good question. Okay, just a few more minutes or I will collapse, and the sight of the 5-star hotel cake shop is just too much to bear. Not that I'll be eating there, I'll be going out and having some simple food. There's lots of little places. You get this special card, red credit card you buy here on the festival. Some places you can't pay with real money, you have to pay by card. It's all very dreadful, but I guess it's cleaner. You never know where money is coming from. People have picked their noses and not washed their hands. And they're handling money, so I can understand it.
No, but I passed.
You chant Om Mani Padme Hum every morning. That's very good. Any other ritual? Look at the 7-limb prayer that we look at. Prostrating, making offerings mentally and on a little altar, and then rejoicing. Rejoicing is marvelous. Rejoice in your own goodness and in the goodness of other people. Really feel happy about it. Don't feel competitive or envious. Rejoice in it and rejoice in your own goodness, the good things that you have done. And if you have a spiritual teacher, pray for their long life and be happy to have that teacher in your life. These kind of things create a lot of positive energy. And, random acts of kindness, as they say. You can feed ants, you can pat a dog occasionally that seems very upset or lonely. Of course, be careful, it's not the kind of dog that's going to bite your hand off. But be kind to people, I think that helps. Be kind to people and animals. And when you're tired, don't be too hard on yourself. When you need to sleep, sleep, as the Zen people say. Yeah, I'm not very good at that one. I tend to keep myself going when I need to sleep. So when you need to sleep, sleep. When you need to eat, eat. When you need to go to the toilet, go to the toilet. That's what the Zen people say. Very good advice. Very good advice. Just one more thing, and then we can carry this on tomorrow evening at 6:30, also from Jaipur. I don't know where I'll be sitting then, but maybe in the same place. Can't say. It'll be cold outside, that's for sure. Okay, let's dedicate then. I think given us some food for thought. What I would say is that when we read history or anything or good literature, what I found, or listen to great music, it engenders love and compassion. Really, it does. You feel for people. You feel for people and their real situations and how much they have conflict, how much they suffer. And a good composer or whatever brings that out in their music, whether it's modern music or classical music, doesn't matter. Creative, good, people bring out this, and then we can, and so that's why you can also sit in a hotel lobby, like I am in a 5-star hotel, and watch people going by, and you can feel kindness and compassion towards them, because, what is on the outside isn't necessarily on the inside. They may be very well dressed on the outside, but inside they have a human body, they have emotions, they're going to die, they have suffering, isn't it? So one can develop these good qualities, these noble qualities, wherever you are. Whether it's in your toilet or in a 5-star lobby, one can, as Dzongsa Rinpoche says, when you're in the toilet or whenever, you can just practice shamatha by focusing on the doorknob. Don't be totally distracted. Focus on the doorknob if you have one in your toilet, and focus your mind, as well as enjoying the relief of getting rid of the garbage, So there's a situation everywhere. Book recommendations, yes, there are so many, Ranjana. You might start with a book that I've just recently bought and not read, but it looks excellent. Just want to remember, it's called Why We Meditate. It's by Sogni Rinpoche, who's a brother of the famous Mingyu Rinpoche, another great Lama, Sogni Rinpoche, and Daniel Goleman, who's the author of Emotional Intelligence. And it's called Why We Meditate. Okay, you can remember that. Don't have to print it up. Why We Meditate. Just you Google that. You'll get Sogni Rinpoche, Tsoknyi Rinpoche, and Daniel Goleman. That's very good. But then there's other excellent books by Thupten Chodron. Any book by Thupten Chodron or Pema Chodron, or indeed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, they are very good. Some are harder than others, so you have to start with the right one. Path of Compassion is good by His Holiness, is excellent. Yeah, there's so many. And some have also great material on interfaith. Yeah, there's another great one. Oh, what's it called? I wish I could remember the title right now. By His Holiness. It's got a good title. Anyway, we can, I'll remember it by Monday, tomorrow, and you can, I will let you know then. I will try to remember by then. I'll remember it as soon as I close the Zoom session, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a series of talks His Holiness gave in France, originally translated into French and then into English. Brilliant essays, really very, very immediate and very penetrating essays by His Holiness, talks by His Holiness. Yeah. So I hope that gives you something to work with. The other excellent book, which is like an adventure story, very moving, very wonderful, is by Mingyur Rinpoche, who you'll see all over the place now. Mingyur, the younger brother of Sokni. Mingyur Rinpoche has written a book called In Love with the World. It is absolutely superb. It is a great book. It's a spiritual classic. And it's like it's like an adventure story as well, and many, many teachings. In Love with the World, Mingyur Rinpoche. Okay. So yeah, you enjoy your reading, and all of you, thank you so much for joining from Thank you very much, Venerable Kundral from Montana, where the time is probably some dreadful time. It's probably like 11:44 a.m. there or something like that. Anyway, thank you. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Kabir.
Yeah, Ranjana, Gaurav, Sonali.
Thank you.
Get well, everybody, if you're not well. And dedicate for everybody to be well and happy and to really, to be of some benefit for this suffering world. Yeah. Please pray for the long life of our spiritual masters and for us never to be separated from the authentic Dharma. And for love and compassion to quickly be ignited in our minds. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.